Hi there. You know, I wish we were able to be talking face to face. You just see my face. I don't get to see yours. I'm sorry. If you were down here at Lithia Park with me, maybe we'd share an iced coffee, iced tea, soda, something like that. So I'll just partake on your behalf. I want to share with you a few ideas about Messiah. Messiah. M-E-S-S-I-A-H. You know, the idea of Messiah is as old as Israel. It's actually first hinted at even in the opening chapters of Genesis. It's especially seen as a beginning point in Genesis 12. We don't realize that until looking back from this end of history. But God said to Abraham, one day I'm going to bless all of the world. Now the way he would do that would be through the Messiah. The Messiah was the anointed one, the promised one. God had a plan to reach the world. It began with him establishing the nation of Israel. Out of Israel would come the Messiah. But the Messiah was not just for Israel. The Messiah was really for the world. And I just want to give you a few scriptures to look at, and you're going to see these fulfilled in the New Testament. There are prophecies called messianic prophecies because they're about the Messiah. And I'd like for you to think about someone in the Old Testament pointing to the future and saying, somebody's coming. The prophets all said this, somebody's coming. David, as a prophet, wrote in Psalm 22 that the Messiah would suffer. You know, if you read that carefully in light of the cross, you're going to see how those prophecies are fulfilled in Psalm 22. It talks about his hands being pierced and his side being pierced. It talks about people casting lots, gambling for his clothing. We know that happened. When Jesus was on the cross, the soldiers gambled for his clothing. So there in Psalm 22, we see the suffering servant or the suffering shepherd as you read Psalm 22, 23, and 24. When you read Jeremiah chapter 31, you see God saying, the day's coming when I'm going to make a new covenant with the household of Israel and Judah. And in that day, I'm going to make a new covenant. And my law I'm going to write on their hearts. And this would be fulfilled through the Messiah. You read this in Luke. Luke stood up to preach one day and he said, you know, God has appointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor, sight to the blind, freedom to those who, and liberty to those who are in prison. And he read from the Old Testament, and then he looked up at the people and he said, now today, these prophecies are fulfilled in me. So Jesus identified himself as the Messiah. In fact, that's what got him in trouble. That was part of what was considered blasphemy. Read it sometime in Isaiah 53. Again, Isaiah is pointing to the future and he says, somebody's coming. Somebody's coming. He's going to be humble. He's going to be meek. There's not going to be something about him that you'd be attracted to him in terms of good looks or charisma. And in fact, he's going to suffer. And we're going to look at him and think that he's despised of God. And then Isaiah says, but we're going to see that his suffering is for us. By his stripes, we are healed. So all throughout the Old Testament, the prophets were pointing to the future and saying, somebody's coming, somebody's coming. And in Jesus, that somebody is identified. Jesus, the Messiah. It's important to read that when you look through the New Testament and remember that Jesus is not just a teacher, he's the one who had been waited for at least 2,000 years. Messiah, an important principle. Thanks for listening.